Good evening. Today is Black Monday, the day the Dow dropped more than 500 points.
Please join me in welcoming George Soros.
It's panic. Everyone's everybody. We're trying to find a bottom.
To stand up and do something, become really engaged in the electoral process in this country.
What we have to confront is a deep, systemic, and structural restructuring of our world. And this will take some time. And the world will look differently after we have gone through this transition process.
For centuries, they've been stuffing their stomachs with human flesh, and they've been stuffing their pockets with money. But they must realize that this bowl of vampires is about to end.
We have an army of digital soldiers.
That this is coming. This is going to be a part of a future where we can take back our power in ways we didn't even think about in the industrial age that are coming in the digital age.
But the common people of these countries in their heart, they can feel what's happening. They can see our struggle for our independence, for our true sovereignty. And they see this connection with their aspirations to be truly independent, which is exacerbated by the fact that in the Western elites there is a strong desire to freeze the current unfair state of things in international affairs.
Well, let me tell you something, brother. When they took a shot at my hero, and they tried to kill the next President of the United States, enough was enough. And I said, let Trumpomania run wild, brother. Let Trumpomania rule again. Let Trumpomania make America great again.
People who don't believe are walking dead. They are asleep. And this is the awakening.
I'm worried very much that this film will bring a lot of anti-Semitism in all over the world. As I know, when I met the Pope 2 or 3 weeks ago, we spoke about the ideas and the relationship between the Jewish nation and the Christian nation, and between the two religions. And we know that the Vatican and the Christians, they changed their mind and they decided that the Jewish nation, the Jewish people, didn't kill Jesus.
Comes sort of like this, but then the Vatican came out and said, no, the Pope doesn't comment about movies, but this is what he's reported to have said.
I didn't hear it. I call the Pope and the Vatican to say it now, immediately, that they believe in the new idea that the Jewish people didn't kill Jesus, and it will bring a lot of good influence against this bad influence from this film. The problem is that the Gentiles all over the world, if they will see this film and they don't know exactly what are our ideas against blood, against killers, against to fight, against everything that is bad behaving between human beings, to them, I think that we must to stop this film because it's bring to all over the world bad influence someone who can explain it in a Jewish hand. You understand?
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I think that behind
All right. Good. Oh. What is happening here?
There we go.
There we go. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Book of Trump. I am your host, Gordon McCormick, the ghost of bass Patrick Henry. This is Badlands Media. This is chapter 48, Mel Gibson. And I have a special treat for y'all because we are joined this time by our good friend, Zak Paine, Red Pill 78. Zak, how are you this evening?
I'm doing well, Gordon. Thank you very much for having me. Always a pleasure to join you.
And I say evening, but it's Saturday afternoon. We are recording.
Yeah, hence the light coming through the window.
Yeah. I'm just trying to set the mood, though. Set the mood. Obviously, Zak has his show at 5 o'clock on Mondays, and then Baseless Conspiracies in the evening. So it's a lot to do the show live in between. I certainly understand that. So appreciate you making the time to pre-record this.
Absolutely.
But what timing for this? Because I think we scheduled this over a month ago, and we were talking, and I was talking to you about doing this even before then.
Yeah.
And I gave you a few different subjects to choose from. I mentioned this at the end of the show last week, and you chose Mel Gibson. Just because I think you said you'd done the other ones several times, so it'd be interesting to do Mel Gibson. And just given like the really big focus of the controversies that Mel Gibson's been involved in and where the current zeitgeist is in the Overton window with politics right now. It's just a very timely episode, far more timely than I would have ever expected it to be.
Yeah, you can say that again. Yeah, it certainly is interesting. You know, I mean, Mel Gibson has had his fair share of controversies, and over the years, it's seemed to focus overwhelmingly, or at least the attention has been overwhelmingly focused on his opinions on Israel and Judaism. And you know, I am not a person who ever, in a blanket sense, like judges anybody. I take every single individual on a case-by-case basis. But there are patterns, obviously, right? I mean, it's undeniable. And the question always is, you know, is it the people or is it the government? You've got a lot of people who look at the United States of America and they'll say, Americans are fat, Americans are lazy, Americans are loud, Americans are rude. But a lot of that, I would imagine, is probably coming as a result of what the government of the United States has done throughout the world over the years, or probably more specifically what the intelligence community has done in foreign nations around the world. And so, you know, I understand when other people will have opinions about the United States of America. And likewise, people have opinions about other peoples around the world and other governments around the world. And certainly right now, as a result of what's happening in the Middle East, a lot of people are voicing their opinions about what's going on in Israel. And, you know, not only what's happening in Israel, but, you know, in a general sense, what's happening with Muslims and in Islam around the world. I mean, it's unavoidable when you go out there on the internet right now. It's basically all consuming.
Yeah, I was we recorded the Badlands Blitz Friday morning with Burning Bright. And we were talking about, you know, the Joe Kent thing came up. And then since then, I was sharing this morning in the Badlands private chat text messages I'd received from my normie cousin who like watches Fox News, and that
was pretty great.
Yeah, pretty great. Like the conclusion she had reached on her own about a lot of this stuff. And it seems like, all right, well, the Joe Kent resignation seemed to have been effective in shifting the Overton window. But as I said on that show, you know, I had just seen, like right before we recorded that Friday morning, a clip on X of, I guess it was Lindsey Graham on Bill O'Reilly's podcast. They were arguing on the podcast about whether or not the relationship between the U.S. and Israel was actually a good thing. And I never in my life thought I would ever see those two people, Bill O'Reilly and Lindsey Graham, arguing about that.
No, me either. So, yeah. That was a bit of a shocker.
That's how far things have come. And I think that's a good sign that these conversations are being normalized to the extent that those two television characters are having them.
Absolutely. Yeah, you know, I mean, it's always, obviously there's been a sort of, well, spoken and unspoken rule that you are not allowed to question that relationship. You're not allowed to question anything related to it. And if you do, then automatically you're branded as an anti-Semite or, some type of a racist or something like that. And, I was actually, this is totally unrelated in most sense in terms of political, but do you know who Aiden Ross is?
Aiden Ross, the name sounds really familiar.
He's the degenerate live streamer who started Kick. Okay. All right. And I don't know anything about Aiden Ross, but he's had like a series of events with fights between different streamers and stuff. And he had planned an event with this black guy who was, his own event coordinator. And Aiden brought a fighter. This guy brought a fighter. They had the event. And then Aiden didn't pay him. And so the guy was texting him and he was like, listen, I just want you to honor your contract. I just want you to pay me. And Aiden was like, oh, come on, man. We should just kiss and make up. You're so cute. And he was like, I'm straight. What are you talking about? He was like, that has nothing to do with you and I signing a contract. And he was like, come on, man. I'm gay and I'm Jewish. What are you, a homophobe? Like, because you don't want to make out with me, because you don't want to sleep with me. And it reminded me of the conversation that we are oftentimes told we're not allowed to have, because this is something I've experienced in my life as well. And it's pretty annoying when someone will use their immutable status against you as an argument for something that has nothing to do with the conversation that you're trying to have. Like, oh, you don't want to allow me to gaslight you, so I'm just going to gaslight you harder. I ripped you off for $20,000, and you're saying that you want me to make good on that. Well, then it must be because I'm gay and I'm a Jew. And the truth of the matter is that it has nothing to do with either of those things. And this guy kept his composure, and Aiden just kept pushing. He was like, wow, a racist homophobe. I can't believe it. And he was like, no. You're a crook. Like, you haven't paid me. And that's the only thing that I care about. So when we're having conversations about the morality of large scale war or indiscriminate killing, that has nothing to do necessarily with someone's religion or sexuality. But it would be as if we mentioned, instead of saying, well, we don't want people to just get bombed, we don't want people to be killed, there are ways to go about things that perhaps involve diplomacy. And we say, Israel, not a good thing, probably just, stop bombing people and let's just get to the table and have a conversation. But instead of saying, well, you don't want us to do this because we're Jewish, they'd say, well, you don't want us to do this because we're gay. You're a homophobe. Like, it doesn't matter which one it is, but each one is equal. It's just as silly.
And it's also worth pointing out that the groups that are merging those two identities, like Israel and being Israeli, like Zionism and being Jewish, are like the ADL and the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. So it is like
Southern Poverty Law Center.
Yeah, so it is like those Jewish diaspora groups that are the ones that were saying, well, wait a minute, you can't take those two things apart. They're inextricably linked. The political national identity of Israel is the same thing as the spiritual religion of Judaism. So it's all narrative shielding, like contrived narrative shielding.
And it has been since the beginning, Gordon.
Oh yes, of course. Before we go there. Before we get started, let's hit an ad read real quick. We're going to start with Van Man. You know about Van Man taking down big toothpaste with all natural oral care, right? Van Man's tooth powder is loaded with minerals like eggshells and bone, and can combine with pulling oils and peppermint aloe mouth rinse. It's truly the ultimate fluoride-free dental hygiene bundle that saves you 25% off the individual prices. And the van never stops. Introducing Van Man's new Pearl Eye Cream and Sweet Onion Shampoo. Head over to badlandsmedia.tv/VanMan to see what's new. That's badlandsmedia.tv/VanMan. All right, and thank you to Van Man. So please go to badlandsmedia.tv/VanMan to pick up your Van Man products today. Okay, so before we go to all the Israel stuff and get into the history of Mel Gibson's life, I just wanted to point this out. One of the first things I published working at Badlands 3 years ago was an article, the Patriot Chronicles, Francis Marion, and I do plan on picking this series back up. It's just the geopolitics stuff really took off. And that's been all my focus. This will be a fun thing to go back to and revisit because as we build the golden age, because it's so important to remember these stories. But I start this because this is the story of Francis Marion, the swamp fox from South Carolina, and how he single-handedly held the British Army back in the Southern Theater for months. And had he not done that by himself, totally cut off from the rest of the Continental Army, he was receiving correspondence, but on a very big delay. And basically everyone else had fled. Everyone else had pulled back and retreated after the British captured Charleston. And this guy by himself, with no resources, with no support, with no logistic line back to the army, like he wasn't receiving supplies or food or anything, by himself, just running an asymmetric guerrilla campaign, held back the British Army long enough for George Washington and Nathaniel Greene to rally and regroup and be able to fight the British in the north, and then come down to Virginia to hold them off. And that's what led to the victory. Had that not happened, though, they would have rolled through North Carolina, Virginia, and the revolution would have been over. So one of the most important and undersung heroes of the revolution, Francis Marion, famously chronicled in the film The Patriot, played and portrayed by Mel Gibson. And as I explained in this opening prologue of this article, because of outside forces, mostly British scholars, they had to revise the script and revise the film to remove the fact, like telling the audience this was based on a true story. And I actually have here's the original script that was leaked in 1998, The Patriot, written by Robert Rodat. And so fade in credits, South Carolina scenery, streams, the Santee River, that's where it takes place. It tells you South Carolina, April 1776. And then right here, superimposed on the screen, the following is based on a true story. That's the original script.
Wow. And
so they removed that. That was forced to be removed. And the reason it was forced to be removed is primarily because of articles like this one, published this is June 15th, 2000. Mel Gibson's latest hero was a rapist who hunted Indians for fun. And so all of these British academics came in and flooded the zone with all these fake articles, fake history about Francis Marion and how he raped Indians and did all this terrible stuff. And I went and looked at the actual source material when I was writing this article. And not only was that not true, but actually Francis Marion was the only militia leader in the South. The South was a bloody, bloody theater. That was like brother versus brother, where you had more people in South Carolina sign up to fight for the British Army than actually signed up to fight for the Continental Army, like the militias. And so it was really, really bad. Like you had a lot of quote unquote traitors, a lot of people who were fighting for the British and turning in their neighbors. And so you had churches that were burned. You had nothing like from the movie where they locked people in and burned the churches, but they did burn churches. You did have women being raped by the British Army. Those officers were reprimanded by the higher ups when they were caught. And the bad guy in the film was based on a real person named Vanastra Tarleton, who was a ruthless guy, just as ruthless as the guy portrayed in the film. And his tete-a-tete with Francis Marion and others, there were a few other characters that Mel Gibson's character was based on, was all true. Like all that was like accurately portrayed the conflict between them. But not only were these lies, but these other militia leaders that were fighting Vanastra Tarleton, who eventually came to join the fight after Francis Marion was successful, they were ruthless. They were like, when we capture British, we cut their throats, we kill them because they're here to kill us.
Sure.
Francis Marion was the only one who was like, no. We capture them and then we show them that we're better men. And we take care of them. And actually there's a story of one of these guys being captured and literally he's like, they were serving me gross potatoes on bark plates while joking about it, like joking about how like great their life is and how wonderful everything is while they were living like absolute savages. He's like, but there were men braiding each other's hair and reading poetry and playing music while in the middle of this intense war. And that British officer, when he was released by Marion, famously retired. He resigned from the army. He said, these men can't be defeated. They can't be conquered because in their minds, they're all free. And so that's a famous story. So the point is that this thing with the Passion of the Christ, it wasn't the first time that Mel Gibson's movie was attacked by people who didn't like the messaging. And the people who didn't like the messaging were the British, because the movie portrayed the British as kind of this ruthless empire that was going to, like, if you step out of line, here's how we're going to react. And it was all true, except for the church scene. That was a little bit of an embellishment. But all the other stuff was pretty accurate. And, it just goes, I'm just trying to demonstrate that there's a precedent here that directly involves Mel Gibson.
Oh, there definitely is, and Mel Gibson had a contentious relationship with Hollywood himself. First of all, his upbringing was pretty interesting. He's American. I believe he has dual citizenship, or perhaps he has given up his Australian citizenship, but his father was American. His mother was Australian. He was born here in the United States, and then they moved to Australia when he was 12. And he knew he wanted to act, like, from a very young age. And so he studied while he was over there. And then he basically started acting at a young age, and, he really made a name for himself with Mad Max. And that's just an incredible film. I absolutely love that movie. But, from the very start, he had a reputation as somebody who really didn't take any shit from anybody else. And he was always this sort of like brash and openly antagonistic force on sets. And so I think that because of that, people didn't like him, but they also didn't like the fact that he was a really good actor. It was like, not only was he not interested in doing what other people wanted him to do, but he was also getting all of these accolades from from the critics and stuff. He's this actor who can kind of compromise between ridiculous action movies, like the historical fiction, and then also like art house type cinema. And there's not a lot of actors who can do that and do that successfully. But he's had, like I said, a number of controversies. He was filming in Toronto, Canada in like 1983 or 1984. And he got drunk and he drove and he ended up rear-ending somebody. And they took his right to drive while he was in Canada. Didn't matter all that much. He's filming a movie. He can just have somebody else drive him around. But the point is that at the same time that he was this brilliant actor and somebody who really danced to the beat of his own drummer, he also seemed to have a lot of demons, because this accident, this drunk driving accident, happened right after breakfast. So he was drinking from a very young age. And I don't know if that was a consequence of growing up in Australia. Did they like their beer in Australia? Or if maybe it was a consequence of what happened in his home life. His father seems to be a fairly interesting character. Was that a picture of his dad that you showed?
Yeah. And by the way, have you heard the story that he's told about how he got the Mad Max role?
No, tell me.
Well, so this is what I've read, is that the narrative that he's put out there is that he was out drinking the night before and he got into a bar fight and he got his ass kicked. And he was like all bloodied up and bruised, and he just went straight to the audition from there. And so he walked in and he was like all beat up and like bruised and bleeding. And he said that look when he walked in there and just acted like, himself, that's what compelled them to cast him. They're like, all right, this guy can pull it off.
Wow.
So
I can see that happening.
That's what he says. So that's the lore surrounding him. But yes, that was a picture of his father, and we should talk about his father for a minute.
Yeah, definitely. So his dad has been written about in sort of the same way that Mel has, but his dad apparently was a rabid anti-Semite. That's what they've written about him online. But really, he's a really traditional Roman Catholic. So is Mel Gibson. His faith is very important to him. I think anybody who knows that he made the Passion of the Christ and he's currently just finishing up the Resurrection of the Christ, it's pretty obvious that his faith is something that has informed his life. But there's a difference between sort of like modern day progressive Catholics and traditional ultra Orthodox Catholicism. And His dad lived to be 101 years old. So he's a tough old bird, just like Mel. Yeah. And he was also, because of the Orthodox Catholicism, that's like pre-Vatican II. And apparently he was not too happy about the Reformation of the church that took place in the mid 20th century. So we're talking like Latin Mass, adhering to, every single step that you're supposed to do. And apparently his father had actually attended seminary for a time. So I guess he was planning to become a priest at some point. But go ahead.
If you don't mind, indulge me for a second. I'll just give his background real quick. So Hutton Peter Gibson, born August 26th, 1918. He's considered an American writer, like a writer. That's the career label they give to him. And a set of Van Cantist. That's the term. That is someone who is Catholic but disagrees with like the fact that the Pope's the leader of the Christian world. He's a World War II veteran, so he fought in World War II. And then in 1968, he became a grand champion on Jeopardy and won a bunch of money.
Wow!
And so he had 11 children. Mel Gibson, I believe, was like one of the middle children, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, the sixth kid. And so he took the money from his Jeopardy winnings and moved the family to Australia from New York.
Okay.
And so that's how the story goes. And so he continued to be a writer in Australia, but he's an outspoken critic of the post-Vatican, the Second Roman Catholic Church, and of those traditionalist Catholics like the Society of Saint Pius X, who reject sedevacantism. In a 2003 interview, he questioned how the Nazis could have disposed of 6 million bodies during the Holocaust and claimed that the September 11, 2001 attacks were perpetrated by remote control. That's interesting.
That's based.
That's like what Codex 9/11 explained, right? Yeah. He's also been quoted as saying the Second Vatican Council was a Masonic plot backed by the Jews. Now he's been questioned about this, and he's clarified that his position on the Holocaust was that it didn't happen, but that it was grossly exaggerated. And I think the famous quote is that he says is that, well, why is it that there were more Jews in the world based on census records after the war than before the war? And that's why they call him an anti-Semite, is because he says stuff like that. So anyway, he's published a bunch of books, mostly about the Catholic Church, but those are some of the topics that come up. But you can understand how that would have influenced his son. And I think Mel Gibson has distanced himself from some of the comments of his dad, but he's also said his dad was a big influence on him. And you see the pictures of them together, certainly when it comes to The Passion.
Yeah. I've never heard him specifically distance himself from his father's statements, but I've definitely seen him asked about his father in interviews. And because, obviously they want to, your father's a famous Holocaust denialist. What do you want to say about that? And he's like, I'm not going to talk about my dad, basically don't go there. Don't go there. But I know that he had a newsletter as well that he published for like on an ongoing basis. And his books were also self-published. So I don't know like how widely circulated they were or, how many people read them. But certainly the influence of a man like that is definitely going to rub off on the children. Mel himself, big Catholic families have even bigger Catholic families. So he was one of 11. Mel has 9 kids. I've never really seen any of his kids. And even though Mel Gibson has like skirted and courted all of this controversy over the years, he's done an incredible job, like with continuing to work and continuing to stay relevant, continuing to do exactly what he wants to do, his craft, his trade, and keeping his family and to a large degree his politics and his opinions out of the media has been incredible. Your average actor cannot wait to get in front of a camera and to just tell you what you should think and how their view is superior to yours. And when I've heard Mel speak, and he's done a number of interviews in the last couple of years, certainly more than I've seen him do over the years, generally tries to do just, promotion on his films. But he has had a couple of really good ones over the years where he talks about, the deeper things, and certainly his faith has been a big part of that. But I could not find anything that he had said related to politics until probably 2021. Actually, no, 2016. In 2016, he was asked who he was going to vote for, or what he thought about the 2016 presidential election. And he said, well, I can tell you one thing for certain. One of the two bad candidates will win. And I don't know at that point if both Hillary and Trump had been nominated for their respective roles, or if this was earlier, but that was the extent of it. But in 2021, of course, after President Trump's first term, Mel Gibson was at a UFC event, and President Trump walks in, and everybody's gotten, they stand up and they're like looking to shake his hand. And Mel Gibson is the lone person in the arena who's standing there saluting the president. And he stood at attention until President Trump came up to him, and then they shook hands and he smiled. And obviously, since then he's made a couple of other statements. In 2024, I've actually got a clip of this. Where is this the TMZ clip?
Do you have the clip of the salute? Because I was about to pull that.
Yeah, go ahead. There we go. Yep. And he was maligned for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they went after him hard for that, because in 2021, obviously during the Biden administration, anybody who supported President Trump, they were, basically trying to crucify. But the thing is, they already crucified Mel Gibson. They had already done it numerous times. After his drunk driving incident in Toronto, he took like a year and a half off, and he went and bought a farm, and he basically withdrew from the Hollywood scene. And he just tried his hand at farming. He tried to get sober, and then he came back. And there's a lot of actors, you take time off like that and you lose your relevancy. And and people don't want to work with you. But he came back, and he just kept on working, and he continued to do great things. But I don't think it was until within the last 10 years or so that he really got sober, because he had his famous drunk driving arrest in, I think it was 2006, on the Pacific Coast Highway, got pulled over. Famous body cam audio was released of that. And they obviously went after him hard. And that was particularly notable because he had already been attacked for even creating the Passion of the Christ.
Oh yeah.
And and have you ever seen the Passion of the Christ?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, it's literally a historical depiction of the last 29 hours or something like that of Christ's life. It's just the tail end of his life, and it's exactly as depicted in the Bible. Mm-hmm. And much like the conversation we started with, like any sort of direct or indirect commentary on something that you actually see happening, it's immediately maligned as some type of an anti-Jewish message, oh my God, Mel Gibson made a movie where he says that the Jews killed Christ. Okay, well, some Jews killed Christ. It's in the Bible. But really, if you know anything about Christianity, it says Jesus died for our sins. Okay, It was the collective of humanity that killed Christ. Okay, and Christ willingly gave his life so that we might live. So, I'm sorry, in my book, nobody gets to have the market on that. And, whether or not you believe in Jesus, whether or not you believe that he died and 3 days later he was risen, he still died for your sins too. So, it is what it is.
Yeah, and Ash and I have been doing the choice on Badlands, which is we go through episode by episode of The Chosen, which is such a great show. I recommend it to anyone who is less familiar with the New Testament. And I think it very accurate. I think the Passion of the Christ paved the way for The Chosen to be made.
Oh, sure.
Because it definitely accurately shows these relationships. And as Ash and I have said so many times, it's the Jewish elite. It's like the Sanhedrin. Like these are, and they're absolutely gatekeepers, and they were very ruthless, and they were very unscrupulous in how they would use like Jewish law to oppress the people.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very clear that like that was happening, like as it's portrayed in the show.
Yeah.
So anyway, those are not new subjects or ideas or themes for this audience. But let's go back. I just want to run through a few things. I actually have two other quotes from his dad that I want to read real quick.
Okay, cool.
One of them from his old writings. One of them is "Tolerance is the last virtue of a depraved society." I think that's very, very. Apparently these are from like decades and decades ago.
Yeah.
He says they're after one world religion and one world government. That's another quote from one of his books.
Wow, I love it.
Yes, this guy sounds pretty based. I mean, this guy sounds like he has a pretty open mind about things. Now, I just want to run through some of Mel Gibson's career before we get to The Passion, because I think that's kind of a big discussion point here.
Yeah.
His breakout role was obviously Mad Max. I think that was 1983. 2 years before that, he was in a film called Gallipoli about the Battle of Gallipoli from World War I. He then was in the sequels to Mad Max in the 1980s.
Yep.
And then was in Lethal Weapon, which became like a huge movie. And a huge series, because there are other movies that were made of it. And then that all kind of culminated. There were obviously other films he was in the 80s and 90s, but that kind of culminated in Braveheart in 1995. I believe Braveheart won like a number of Academy Awards, right? And back then, that was I think the Academy Awards haven't mattered for a very long time, but back then that was like once you win an Academy Award, then you're kind of a made man in Hollywood, right? You can kind of just make movies after that. And that's probably what gave him a lot of the. I mean, he self-funded The Passion. I think it was a $30 million budget.
Yes, created a film studio to do that as well. Icon Films. He wanted to make, because I mean, he was sick of working within the studio complex, and there was nobody that was going to touch The Passion of the Christ. And prior to that, any film that was about God, well, I mean, you can go back to like Charlton Heston and stuff like, those original movies from the original, like, Hollywood studio scene. There was a number of films that were based on stories of the Bible, and they were big releases. But in terms of like modern films, anything that was about Christianity or about Christ or about God, they were all like very small scale, like independent films. And like movies about God at that point had kind of developed a, the assumption was that if it was a movie about Christ, or if it was about God, or it was about the Bible, it was basically going to be produced by like CBN or something like that. It was going to be low budget, and there wasn't going to be any big actors in it, and it wasn't necessarily going to be good. It wasn't going to be like a Hollywood blockbuster. And The Passion of the Christ completely turned that on its head. It showed that you could tell a compelling story that was produced really, really well, that was written well. Like, I mean, the amount of research that went into that, like it was in like Aramaic, Latin, and Hebrew, two dead languages, and one that's, very limitedly spoken, basically in religious circles. And that had never been done before, as far as I know. I mean, it was a massive undertaking. And overall, I mean, the film, I want to say it grossed like $370 million here in the United States, and then about like $600 or so million worldwide. Yes. It did incredibly well. And I remember the conversation, like, when it came out, and so many people were just like, oh, have you seen The Passion of the Christ yet? Like my entire family went out and saw it. And it was a cultural phenomenon at the time, because, for there to be a movie in this like depraved, satanic Hollywood system, there's a movie about the life and the death of Christ. And it was just something that you had never seen before.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely right. And yeah. And again, like, I think that the experience of The Patriot probably like fed into him kind of just like bucking, like, I don't care what y'all think or say, because he like the Patriot was obviously much more of a political thing, far more like than religious or whatever. And to have like American history censored by British academics who are threatening to basically they contacted the producers, as I understand it, and they threatened the producers that we are going to slander all of you and we'll make sure that like your lives are destroyed if you don't do this. And so the producers were like, all right, well, we're still going to release the film. We're just going to make it like a work of fiction, basically.
Wow.
So anyway, so let's go. I know you have some clips. I want to play those. Before we do, I just want to like tie this all together so everyone keeps this in mind as we're moving forward. Mel Gibson is very relevant right now because he has been appointed as one of 3 people to be considered Trump's liaison to Hollywood. I think the other two were Sylvester Stallone and then what's his name?
John Voight,
who I think passed away.
Did he?
Did he? Maybe not.
I don't think so.
Spread fake news, but I thought I saw he had passed away. Maybe not. But yes, it was John Voight, Sylvester Stallone, and Mel Gibson. And so
yeah, he's still alive, 87 years old.
Okay. John Voight, breaking news, John Voight's still alive. All right. So just running through like the interactions between Trump and Mel Gibson. The first one was in 2021. We saw the salute. The next one was in 2023 in Las Vegas. There was another MMA fight where Mel Gibson and Mark Wahlberg were there, and they were hanging out with Trump. And then they were basically, the two of them, Wahlberg and Gibson, were like destroyed in the media. They were tagged as disgusting for normalizing Trump because at that point, like the media thought Trump was done and he was never coming back. And how could you possibly even speak to somebody like that? He is persona non grata. And then in 2024, Mel Gibson publicly, before Mel Gibson endorsed Trump actually came out and posted on social media on True Social and said, Mel Gibson is great, like in all caps. Talking about how great Mel Gibson is. And then Mel Gibson, of course, came out and endorsed him for president. And then he became Trump's official liaison for Hollywood. And then it actually says right here in this 2024 article, it's from Newsweek. It says Trump posted to his social media platform True Social on Tuesday about the upcoming election. He shared a meme to his account that had a photo of a clean-cut Gibson with the text, "Me voting for Trump in 2016," alongside a photo of Gibson from the film Braveheart. Okay, yeah, that's it. I thought that was about going to say something else. Yeah, we've all seen that. So anyway, now let's go back though and watch some of these clips because I think that this controversy around this film is so relevant to like the political discourse right now. And I played that opening clip of the AP like interviewing that rabbi who said this film cannot be released because if it does, it's going to foment anti-Semitism, which is ridiculous. But
so ridiculous.
Yeah. So if you have that 3-minute clip that I know you said you had.
Yeah. So this is a 3-minute clip, part of a 24-minute interview. The entire interview is gangbusters. I'd recommend anybody watch it, but this is sort of like a highlight reel. But this is during the 1998 press tour for Conspiracy Theory. And, you know, it puts a whole different spin on that film now, knowing what we know about his father and likely what Mel Gibson grew up with and what he was taught. And so in this interview, Mel Gibson essentially talks about his relationship with Hollywood. And let me just get this pulled up. Okay. And if you want to go ahead and add that to the screen, I don't think I have the ability to.
There we go.
Okay, here we go.
You know, I had a whole bunch of weird paranoid suspicions about what the hell was going on because there was a lot of stuff I couldn't understand.
Right.
And nobody was really bothering to explain it to me.
They don't.
And and I formed a bunch of opinions about the town and about the people in it that were like, surely that couldn't be. Because a whole place can't be like, you know, Weird Town, you know, where the stranger wanders in and all the people are in the bar and they all shut up when he looks at them and they tell you don't go to the house on the hill. And it's like that. And then you go away and you think, no, I was wrong. I mean, that's insane thinking. I'm paranoid. I imagined that stuff. That couldn't be the reason for why so-and-so was acting like, could it? And then you find out later on the track that you are exactly on track with a lot of this stuff. Not specifically on track, but that you could, that some of your worst nightmares were real at the time. And you think, no, he came to see me on a rooftop in New York. I said, hey, can I talk to you? And he said, sure. And he floated in sideways through a crowd of people. He was wearing black. And it was like one of those old vampire movies where they don't walk, but they glide. And he was a dancer, you know, so he has he's very, you know, graceful. And he moved sideways and he just sat down in a chair next to me. And it kind of frightened me. And he's a very smart guy. And we started talking, and I didn't, you know, say much of anything about reading the script, nothing. I just started talking about the Middle Ages. And he began to talk tortures. And we swapped tortures because I'd read this book on torture. And I tried to recall some of the most heinous things I'd ever read in this book. And he was like, oh, and he'd try and top it. And it got, and my assistant was there, and he left because he couldn't stand it anymore. The air had turned cold. And then he left, and I wanted to leave. And because I knew that I didn't want to work with him. And he was getting scary. And there's a producer I know, successful producer. I will not mention names, but his whole opinion about women on film, from beginning to end, is very brief. He says, women on film, either naked or dead. Both is better. And it's like, whoa, whoa. The man has got a spiritual malady for a start. I mean, the scary thing is that I think a lot of people think that.
Dark. Very dark.
Extremely dark.
You know, and another thing that strikes me about Mel Gibson is that the fact that he wouldn't mention names, like he never said, you know, who that producer was that he was talking about there, you know, the vampire gliding through the crowd. And you know, there's a lot of people.
Wasn't he talking about, what's his name? He was talking about the father from Wedding Crashers. I don't know why I can't think of his name, but it'll come to me. Keep going. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, I don't know who it was. If that's who it was, then we got to find out now. Who was the father in Wedding Crashers?
It's it's a famous actor. It's because I've seen that extended clip. It's someone in the chat's yelling at me right now. Of who it is, I'm sure. But anyway, continue your point, and I will. Christopher Walken. That's who he's talking about.
Oh,
that's it.
Oh,
yeah. So he was talking about Christopher Walken in that, like, in the extended clip.
That's crazy because I can imagine Christopher Walken just being like one of the creepiest people in the world in person. But it's like, you don't know. Is he really that dark of a soul, or is it just like he enjoys making people uncomfortable? I'm not certain.
That's kind of what it sounded like Mel Gibson was speculating too. Is like maybe that he was just messing with me, but But he's like, the air turned cold and I wanted to leave, but I couldn't. Like, but Christopher Walken is who he was talking about in that clip. But
you know, I mean, but you know, mentioning the producer and his thoughts on women, you know, he was also asked at a certain point, like after all of the Me Too stuff and after people were being exposed, like the Harvey Weinsteins and stuff, and he was like, you know, well, what's it matter now? You know, I mean, like, it's already happened. It happened for years and nobody cared about it, right? You know, I mean, like, this is how it happens in Hollywood. And for people to basically be up in arms about it at this point, it's kind of ridiculous. Because this is the world that they lived in. And this is one of the reasons why he was disturbed enough to leave Hollywood for a period of time and then come back. And it's also one of the reasons why he felt the need to make his own production company, because obviously the influence of money and producers and, you know, all of these external factors, it creates a situation where you can't tell the story that you want to tell, where they force you into, you know, producing something that maybe is commercially consumable, but not necessarily artistically gratifying. And another film that Mel Gibson was involved with that, of course, never would have been made under the regular modern Hollywood system was The Sound of Freedom, and
yes, you're right.
Yeah. And, Mel Gibson produced that. And I believe that was his production company that was behind it. And, and similar to the story about the Patriot, after that came out, they tried to destroy the subject of that movie. I'm drawing a blank on his name right now. They said that he was like a rapist and a trafficker.
You talking about the subject of the Patriot?
No, the subject of Tim Ballard. In The Sound of Freedom.
When The Sound of Freedom came out. Yeah. Tim Ballard. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Because I mean, obviously the whole movie is about, stopping child trafficking.
Yep.
And so there were a lot of articles that were written, suggesting that, Tim Ballard and his group of people had actually not done the things that they claim they did. And then more than that, when he was, in this situation where a woman is supposed to be in a relationship with him, and they suggested that Tim Ballard was a little too handsy or something like that, or like basically he had sexually assaulted this woman. But, they're in theater. Okay. I mean, like they're supposed to be pretending like they're in a relationship. And if people don't believe that they're in a relationship, then they're not going to perhaps make it out alive. Right. So it felt really disingenuous to me. And I really perceived that entire thing as another attempt to just destroy Ballard and the movie in the minds of the people who would want to go see it. Because, they take the subject of the Patriot and they say, oh, he's a rapist and he's a misogynist and he's, he killed Indians for fun. So then the people who might go see that movie, where they're like, oh gosh, maybe I don't want to see this movie now. And the same with The Sound of Freedom. They're saying, oh my gosh, well, Tim Ballard, he's a trafficker, he's a rapist, he's a misogynist. Maybe I don't want to go see that movie. And you never heard about that for things with the Hollywood studios. Think about how many times have you seen since Woody Allen was exposed for grooming his adopted daughter? I know he wasn't officially the adopted father, but he raised that little girl, Sunyi Previn. He raised Sunyi Previn from she was, an adolescent. As soon as she turned 18, he left Mia Farrow and he and Sunyi Previn got married. Like that is as classic a grooming situation as I can imagine. He was also accused of molesting the children that he had with Mia Farrow, Ronan Farrow, I believe, was Frank Sinatra's son. And the other child, that was actually his daughter with Mia Farrow. But he was accused of molesting her. And I say accused because he hasn't gone to court, but I've heard some phone calls between Mia Farrow and Woody Allen, and it seems pretty obvious that he knows he did something wrong, whatever that was. But Woody Allen has had a number of films come out since then. Some major Hollywood icons have continued to work with Woody Allen, and they talk about Mel Gibson. Oh my God, Mel Gibson said some stuff when he was drunk about the way Jews control Hollywood, and that's unforgivable. But Woody Allen grooms a child for 10 plus years, molests another child, and he's a genius. He's an auteur. So why wouldn't we work with him?
Who was the guy who got the standing ovation in the 2000s for at the Academy Awards after he was charged with pedophilia and fled? I think he fled to Israel.
Roman Polanski.
Roman Polanski.
Yeah. Roman Polanski in the 1970s.
Meryl Streep. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. He groomed, drugged, and then anally raped a 13-year-old girl in a hot tub. And that child told her mother, and Roman Polanski was arrested and then charged, and he was charged with rape, and the prosecutor allowed him to cut a plea deal. And Roman Polanski thought he was going to cut a plea deal and then just get probation. And then it became
Maybe
obvious.
I'm busy. I told you. Yeah, that's wild. That is absolutely wild. And and then like obviously like Harvey Weinstein. I mean, there's like the list just goes on. Like all that was all an open secret. All this stuff was open secrets, and people didn't care.
No. And Roman Polanski, I mean, he fled to France and he was there for decades and he continued to make movies. And and people just like wrote it off. No big deal. But Mel Gibson, he's like the worst person you could possibly imagine when it comes to the Hollywood press corps.
Yeah. So I actually do have a clip here because Jim Caviezel is who played both Jesus in The Passion, and he also played Tim Ballard in The Sound of Freedom. He obviously has a really good relationship with Mel Gibson. And then of course The Resurrection of the Christ, been one of the most anticipated films of all time because The Passion was, I think, the highest grossing R-rated film, maybe up until recently, but for a very long time, it was the highest rated or the highest grossing commercially successful R-rated film, which is a high watermark. And they say that the Resurrection film is going to be pretty great. So,
and it's going to be 2 parts.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. And they both come out in 2027.
Okay. Yeah, I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
Here is Jim Caviezel, though, just explaining on Sean, name escapes me.
Ryan. I always forget his name too. Sean Ryan.
Thank you. Yeah, Sean Ryan explaining how he got picked by Mel Gibson. This is a 1-minute clip.
How did you get word about that film? I knew Mel Gibson was, but I did not know it was Steve McAvity. And that was his key producer. They invited me to a film. I think it was Tom Hanks and Mel Gibson were going to do this together. It was on Mavericks. We were talking about the movie. I didn't think the script was there yet. And then all of a sudden, Mel pivot to something. And I said, oh my God. And I said, you want me to play Jesus, don't you? And he looked at me. He was smoking a cigarette. And he just, yeah, put his head down. 2 days later, he called me and he goes, hey, Jim, it's Mel. I said, Mel who? He goes, I don't know, Mel Brooks. Hey, you're smoking a cigarette. And he goes, do you still want to play this Jesus guy? If you do, you may never work in this town again. We're all called to carry our cross. If you don't pick up and carry your cross, you will be crushed by the weight of it. He got really quiet on the phone. I said, I just realized my initials are JC and I'm 33 years old. And he goes, God, you're freaking me out. He hung up the phone.
It's so good.
God, he's such a legend. And he was right. I mean, Jim Caviezel's career was like ruined because of that.
Very true.
He didn't work in mainstream Hollywood after that. So it's good point by him. And so this it's funny because we've done Kanye West on this show. I did that with Cam pretty early on because Kanye, I kind of consider Kanye and Mel to be like in this pantheon of whatever you want to call this, the truth movement, the Great Awakening is probably a good moniker.
Mm-hmm.
But I consider both of them in the pantheon of the Great Awakening, regardless of what they do, like what other sins and flaws they have in their life. For this reason, because the two of them have taken the subject matter of Jesus, brought it to the mainstream, and made it commercially successful in the most mainstream way possible. That would be Mel Gibson with The Passion of the Christ, Kanye West with Jesus King, the album.
Mm-hmm.
The Kanye episode we didn't get into the part 2 of Kanye, which we're going to do eventually, but that's like during the Biden years. But you definitely see, I think, some parallels in like what happened to Kanye in 2022 after he went DEFCON 3 on the Jews, right? Following his stunt at Paris Fashion Week, where all he did was just wear a shirt that said "White Lives Matter," and then he was viciously attacked. But obviously, the knives were out for Mel Gibson with this Passion film, as he alludes to there in that film or in that anecdote by Jim Caviezel. And the pressures on him, I think, were enormous. The pressures on the film were enormous. You mentioned his, the drinking problem, and he's put commentary out. I've seen interviews where he's put commentary out about that.
Mm-hmm.
But that leads to some incidents where he's drunk. He's either engaging with the police or he's just engaging with people in Hollywood who then tell the stories later. and he gets arrested, I think, on a DUI one time, and he's talking about that. But I think that was in 2006, and then he goes on Good Morning America and gives kind of this famous interview with Diane Sawyer. And it might be worth watching a few clips of that if you're prepared for that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, do we want to actually hear some of the audio of the drunk driving first?
If you have that, then yes.
Yeah, I do have. I believe this is from TMZ. Hold on. Okay, I've got it over here. I got to pull it from a different browser. Okay, so oh gosh, hold on. This is just the transcript. Hold on. I could have sworn that I had actually heard a real recording from this this drunk driving arrest, but I'm starting to think maybe it's not online, or maybe Mel was successful in getting it taken offline. But there is some TMZ coverage from the time that it actually came out. If you can pull that up, this is just the article, but there is the actual report from the arresting officer. And basically what happened is, he was found to be driving on the Pacific Coast Highway. He had a bottle of tequila with him, and it was very early in the morning on, Friday morning. So I guess like Thursday night, Friday morning, he's in Malibu, and the officer pulls him over and he just starts kind of going off on her. And he says, my life is fucked. Probably because he got pulled over. But the actor, he gets out of his car. The officer tries to cuff him, and he didn't want to get cuffed. Eventually, he cooperates, and he tells the officer, I'm not going to get in your car. And then he tries to run back to his own car. The officer has to subdue him, cuffs him, and puts him away. And there is audio that exists out there. I know that there's audio that exists out there, but he's in the car with the officer, and he tells the officer, you motherfucker, I'm going to fuck you. And he just continues to threaten the police officer. And he says that he's going to spend all of his money to get even with him. And then he goes into a series of anti-Semitic remarks. Allegedly, he says, the fucking Jews. The Jews are responsible for all the wars in the world. And then he asks, are you a Jew? And the deputy is like, whoa, hold on. Where'd this come from? And so then another cop shows up, and they start filming Mel Gibson. And Gibson is like, what the fuck do you think you're doing? And then he looks at a female officer and he says, what do you think you're looking at, sugar tits? It's so funny because I said sugar tits on my show the other night, just a couple of days ago. I was making fun of Kat Abagazela, that Antifa candidate for representative in Illinois who just lost her race. Anyways, I forgot that this is where I got it from. But anyways, so he ended up taking a couple of different alcohol tests, and he kept saying, how he was so screwed. And basically, I think that's like the long and the short of it. But he said that, or the police, when they wrote up the report, they said that his comments were, if they were to come out, they were going to incite Jewish hatred, and that it was just way too inflammatory. And obviously, they knew at this point, this is a couple of years after the Passion of the Christ, and they were already going after him for saying that the film had created all of this anti-Jewish sentiment. And, it makes me wonder, how much of this drunken tirade had something to do with the pressure that had been put on him for the last several years for the Passion of the Christ, right? The idea that he was an anti-Semite for even making this film, rather than, in my opinion, I feel like he was a passionate about his faith. That's the reason that he made the film. He didn't set out to make the film because he's like, I got to make sure everybody knows that the Jews killed Jesus. Like, the Bible's been out for a couple of thousand years. Okay. Like if anybody has that as their takeaway, then you've already come to that conclusion. Like, learning the historical facts about the death of Christ, I don't think that that's going to really change hearts and minds. And that's just my opinion. But I mean,
well, and just raised as a Protestant in the Anglican Church, I can definitely say that, and from what I've observed just in like the general media space, that in the Protestant world, that's definitely been revised so that it's the Romans who killed Jesus. That's definitely like suffered under the Romans. I think that's how they changed the Lord's Prayer.
I was raised Catholic, and the same is true in Catholicism. It's
fully blamed on the Romans.
Yeah.
And but as the film accurately shows, it was both the Romans and the Sanhedrin. But Pontius Pilate famously washed his hands of the situation and walked away because he was like, this is so silly, and this is something that the Chosen has indulged as well. That like when the Romans all meet Jesus, they're like, oh, this guy's like not a threat at all. Like, he's not going to do anything. Oh, wait a minute. He's encouraging people to pay their taxes and be like dutiful, lawful, law-abiding citizens. This is great. Yeah, just leave him alone. He's fine. Yep. It wasn't until the Caiaphas and the Sanhedrin,
Pharisees.
Yeah, they really twisted their arm and said, hey, we need this guy gone because he's causing real problems for us if you want us to be able to maintain control over the people. And that was the relationship between Rome and the Sanhedrin, was that the Sanhedrin kept the people in line. And
exactly.
And Rome allowed the Sanhedrin to remain the elite, and King Herod as well, for that matter.
When you grew up, like, did you have you ever listened to Jesus Christ Superstar?
I was going to say, I want to say I went to see a musical when I was a kid. It was like, was it Joseph and the Multicolored Raincoat or something?
That was another one, but yeah,
it was one of those two. But yeah, I think I remember the song, like the Jesus Christ Superstar song, because I remember my brothers and I would always kind of like sing that to make fun of each other. Like we would like just to just to make fun of one another whenever we were trying to do that. But
because I grew up listening to Jesus Christ Superstar, and it's honestly I would recommend that, and like anybody who's a Christian, I think that you should listen to it. And it's powerful, Gordon. Let me tell you, like, I mean, I can't put that record on and not like get emotional. I will cry every single time because it details everything, and it shows the just like the political intrigue and the subterfuge and the sacrifice of Jesus. And
that's not what I saw. Yeah, I think I saw Technicolor Raincoat. I think that's what I saw.
Technicolor Dreamcoat, but yes,
Multicolored Dreamcoat. Yeah, which is like Parliament Funkadelic meets the New Testament, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is definitely like a modern rock opera, but it's. I mean, it's real. It's real. Like, I mean, it's like the way, like it for me growing up as a Catholic.
Man, it's better if you'd had.
Is this it?
Yeah.
No, I have not seen this.
So you don't need to necessarily watch. Like, I mean, you can watch the movie if you want to watch the movie, but I would suggest just sitting down with the album and just because that's what I grew up with. So like hearing it. And just, I mean, the music is good, but like the message is really what got me.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Like, I don't know how commercially successful this was, but that's what I was.
Oh, it was incredibly successful.
I was thinking about the back of my mind. Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Like in the back of my mind, I was thinking like with Kanye West in his album and like Mel Gibson and Passion of the Christ versus Joseph and the Multicolored Dreamcoat. I don't know how commercially successful that is, but
I think that was pretty successful too.
Okay, maybe it was, but it wasn't $600 million worldwide in sales.
Not at all.
Sure.
No, not at all.
Not that the money really matters; it's the message. But it just is the money's a metric for how many people consumed it, how many minds it reached.
Anyway. I mean, I look at Jesus Christ Superstar. I mean, that's like that era's modern equivalent of like Kanye West's album.
I don't think I don't think I've ever seen that. So I'll have to check it out and I'll have to listen to the album. But yeah, that doesn't look like, I mean, it's kind of like Joseph and the Multicolored Dreamcoat, but the thing I saw live was all over the place, and it was definitely not
theater kids.
It definitely wasn't. It definitely wasn't scripture based in terms of what was happening on stage.
Jesus Christ Superstar truly is. It's really good. And I think I would hope that it would resonate with you. I mean, I can still sit down. We used to listen to it every year at Easter, basically. We'd go to church, we'd have we'd listen to it on Easter weekend, right? Because the whole weekend was devoted to it. And Lent every year, just the holiday leading up to the resurrection of Christ was always a big occasion.
Yeah, well, the song that I referenced before that my brothers and I would sing to one another when we were teasing each other was definitely not that song. It was definitely something different, but it was Jesus Christ Superstar. Do you believe who you really are?
Yeah, yeah. They're taunting him. He has already, performed miracles, and he's for a period of time he's accepted, and then they start to sort of delegitimize him. And they're basically oh, you think you're the son of God, and it's crazy, man. It's good.
Interesting. Well, so after that arrest happens, he goes. This is 2006. Mel Gibson goes on GMA and does the interview with Giant Story. So let's listen to a little bit of it.
Okay.
And hear what he says.
Same things like try and drive at high speed. Even a couple of drinks, you lose all humility. Everything is just, you become a braggart and a blowhard. And
yeah, one of the things you said was about owning Malibu.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. Yes. I own this place, as I sat in the back of a police car with my hands cupped.
And then, as the officer arrested him, a tirade against Jews.
Take me back to that moment as you remember it then. Officer James Mee.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know him? Did you know he was Jewish?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I found out later. But that's...
He actually was.
Why would you have asked
Yes,
him?
he was.
I don't know. It's all... I didn't know if he was or wasn't. I mean, I said horrible things to him. And he was pretty patient.
These are the words.
Mm-hmm.
How horrible does he think they were? I read to him the officer's account of the words he used that night. Expletive Jews. And to Officer Mee, are you a Jew? And
the Jews are responsible for all the wars in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Are those anti-Semitic words?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Sounds horrible. And I'm ashamed of that. That came out of my mouth. And I'm not that. That's not who I am,
We have a world in which alcohol is used
to
excuse behavior.
It's always, alcohol is used to kill pain. And it is no excuse, by the way. It's not a good enough excuse.
If the police officer had been black.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Maybe. I don't know.
What would you have said?
Who knows? I'd have to get loaded again and tell you, and then be in those conditions again, because it's unpredictable what's going to come flying out.
At the police station, still...
Yeah, I mean, you gotta have to give him credit that he's pretty glib with his he's pretty. It feels like he's being genuine when he's responding to that, because he's being a little self-deprecating and all of that.
Oh, you have to be. I mean, he put out a public statement before he went on Good Morning America. He said, after drinking alcohol on Thursday night, I did a number of things that were very wrong and for which I am ashamed. I drove a car when I should not have and was stopped by the LA County Sheriffs. The arresting officer was just doing his job, and I feel fortunate that I was apprehended before I caused injury to any other person. I acted like a person completely out of control when I was arrested, and I said things that I do not believe to be true and which are despicable. I am deeply ashamed of everything I said. Also, I take this opportunity to apologize to the deputies involved for my belligerent behavior. They have always been there for me in my community, and indeed probably saved me from myself. I disgrace myself and my family with my behavior, and for that, I am truly sorry. I have battled with the disease of alcoholism for all of my adult life and profoundly regret my horrific relapse. I apologize for any behavior unbecoming of me in my inebriated state, and I've taken necessary steps to ensure my return to health. For all of the aspects of Mel Gibson, the fact that he's an alcoholic and he's recovered and he's in long-term recovery, that is honestly something that truly resonates with me, because for years, I too battled alcoholism and drug abuse. And much like Mel Gibson, loved alcohol, loved whiskey, loved beer, loved cocaine. And he's absolutely right. You know, all of those things are symptoms of pain that you're trying to alleviate inside yourself. And for a lot of people, certainly for myself, probably for Mel, it sounds like it's when those things are available and you are not equipped with the necessary tools to confront and deal with those things, those demons that are, you know, plaguing your mind on a daily basis. It is very easy to slip into those behaviors. And, you know, in a world like Hollywood, I would say that it's, you know, far too easy. You know, those things are around all the time, and you're surrounded by people who are more than happy to help you debase yourself. I mean, it's, you know, what a better story than for the Hollywood elites, whomever controls it, to take the man who created one of the most consequential films about the life of Christ, probably the most consequential film until the release of the Resurrection of the Christ, and ensure that they debase themselves in such a horrific and public way. And you know, I mean, it's not easy to get sober, and especially not when you find yourself in a situation like this. I mean, the last thing you want to do after you have completely humiliated yourself in this way is to confront it, to talk about it, and then to stay sober so that you have to keep thinking about it. But truly, that's the only way that you can ever move past any of this stuff. And I heard an interview with Mel in the last couple of years, and they, you know, they had asked him, you know, how do you, you know, basically, like, how do you, like, you know, just like operate in the way that you do, because you just seem like everything is great. And he said, you know, I wake up every morning and I remind myself that I'm not in control of any of this. And that's honestly the same way that I live. And it's probably because I learned that in Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, in Hollywood, you're basically taught that you are the center of the universe. And all of these people, you know, it's an industry and a career that's based on narcissism. And you have to sell yourself. And, you know, barring being able to sell yourself, you have to sell pieces of yourself or be willing to give them away so that you will be cast in a film, or, you know, you're going to do things that perhaps you would never do. And in that same way, you know, I mean, like, I have to remind myself every single day that I'm insignificant in the grand scheme of things. The world does not revolve around me. I am not in control of 99% of what's happening around me. The only thing that I can control is my own behavior and my reaction to the things that happen around me. And having that foundation on which I live my life is it allows me to have tremendous peace and to not be consumed with all of these things that are happening around me. I see a lot of people in the chat, you know, out there on social media, and people are obsessed with the idea of molding the world around them. If only I could make the world be this way. Like, that's, you know, that's a great thought. I mean, I wish that, you know, certainly I could make the world do certain things around me. If I could have the power of God to mold the thoughts and the opinions of every single person around me, or the actions of world leaders, then it would probably be a much easier world, because it'd be exactly the way that I want it to be. But that's impossible. So why do I need to consume myself with that? Why do I need to give myself the anxiety that comes along with that? I am not in control. And if I obsess about trying to have control, I'm going to go right back to drinking. I'm going to go right back to using drugs. And that's essentially, you know, what it's like living in the mind of an alcoholic. And so I feel like I understand Mel Gibson in a way that perhaps maybe I wouldn't understand other people.
Yeah, that's all well said. Thank you for saying all that. That's yeah, because there's certainly plenty of anecdotes out there that I'm sure Mel Gibson would like to have back, and it seems like all of them are probably alcohol feud or alcohol related or whatever. So anyway, that is what it is. And so I think before we get to kind of like winding down, first let's hit an ad, and then we'll come back and kind of reset and kind of do a final segment and closing thoughts. And so our next ad is from our friends over at Tamarack Garden. Spring has sprung at Tamarack Garden. Time for your body to bloom with plant-powered magic. Kick off your spring glow with their best-selling detox collection. It lovingly supports your kidneys, liver, and lymphatic system, flushing out winter junk for fresh energy, clarity, and that vibrant spring vibe. Then hit the sun safely. Their nourishing sunscreen packed with skin-loving plants and natural SPF, tinted with cocoa for instant golden glow. No white residue, just radiant you. Protect against mosquitoes and ticks the natural way with their DEET-free plant-powered bug spray. Safe and effective family protection. Their herbal lineup eases headaches, allergies, anxiety, and more, all handcrafted by a fun family in North Idaho since 2021 from local wild weeds and wildflowers. Reclaim your health one plant at a time with Tamarack Garden. Visit tamarackgarden.com. Use promo code BADLANDS for $10 off a $50 order. So thank you to our friends at Tamarack Garden. And yes, and I appreciate you sharing all that, because I think that's an important theme here with some of this heavier stuff, because with demons kind of being in all this, and we see, by the way, a lot of these similar parallels with a figure like Kanye West, right, who struggles with these demons and the pressures from Hollywood and elsewhere. And so I think this upcoming film, Resurrection of the Christ, is really going to be something special from what I've heard about it and from what Mel Gibson has said about it. And we'll close out the show. The closing outro video will be it's a 7-minute clip I have of him and Joe Rogan talking about it, him describing it.
Yes,
it's probably a good place to land it. But before that, a few other things I wanted to hit on him. These are just kind of like fast facts. One thing I did not know about Mel Gibson, because I have young kids. So my daughter recently watched that Disney movie Pocahontas, which came out when I was a kid.
Yeah, I remember it. Yeah,
sometime in the 90s. I didn't know that Mel Gibson was the main character in that.
I guess I didn't either.
Well, I started hearing because I'm sitting there watching the movie with my kids, and I hear the voice, and I'm like, that sounds like Mel Gibson. And then at the end of the movie, I went and checked I was checking the credits, and it's like, that is Mel Gibson. He plays John Smith in that.
Yeah.
And then the second male lead in that is what's his name? Patrick Bateman.
Christian Bale.
Christian Bale. Yeah, I was like, Christian Bale and Mel Gibson were like in an animated Disney movie. That's weird. Very random. Yep. Did not know that at all about that movie. But I mean, not that I would, I don't know much about Disney lore, but I thought that was very random. So that was kind of a recent revelation for me.
Have you ever seen Chicken Run?
Is that the claymation?
Yes.
Is it like claymation? I remember it. I don't know if I ever saw it, but
it's from the people that made Wallace and Gromit. It's
okay. I recall
anyways
that show or whatever. We used to watch that in school. I think they would show that in school.
Yeah, Mel Gibson was the lead chicken in Chicken Run as well.
Interesting. Okay, I did not know. I didn't know he did voice acting.
Yeah.
Yeah. But by the way, where I live, and I was explaining this to my daughter because she's smart to pick up on this. Where that movie takes place is right around where I live.
Cool.
Where the Pocahontas movie would have taken place. So I tell my daughter that, and she she's a kick out of that. But also Hacksaw Ridge, I didn't that's kind of a little bit relevant here with war happening. I didn't realize Mel Gibson made that movie.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's the movie about the pacifist medic, right? Who was a pacifist, but he still went ahead and served in World War II as a medic, and then ended up, I think he got a Medal of Honor for saving all those guys at Hacksaw Ridge.
I think Mel Gibson won a couple of he won Best Director and Best Picture for that as well. And then did Andrew Garfield? I think he won Best Actor
Yeah,
as
he was
well.
a star that I remember.
Yeah, yeah. And then best film editing, best sound mixing, and best sound editing as well. So yeah, that swept that year. That was huge because Mel Gibson had, he had basically been forced to take time away from Hollywood. And there was, for a long time, there were people who were like, Mel Gibson should never be allowed to make films ever again because of what he did. I mean, obviously the drunk driving arrest. And I think like 3 years later, he also got into a drunken argument with his wife at the time. And she recorded it and then also released some of their text messages. And that came out. I think he might have gotten arrested for that as well. And, but again, the same thing. It's the alcoholism. It's really the alcohol that's fueling all that. And so Mel was forced to take some time away. I think that the next film that he was in was called Edge of Darkness. Have you ever seen that?
Yes. Yeah. Edge of Darkness. Yep.
So I've got a clip actually that I wanted to play from the press tour on that. He was being interviewed by CNN about this, and they were basically like, what about people who say you shouldn't be allowed to make films? And Mel confronts this guy as he's trying to basically catch him in some type of gotcha about doing this film. So here, if you can pull that up.
Yes.
Some people are going to welcome you back, and other people are going to be like, you should never come back.
Why?
Because of what happened before.
What happened before?
The remarks that were attributed to you.
That were attributed to me, that I didn't necessarily make. Okay, but I gather you have a dog in this fight.
Pardon me?
You have a dog in this fight, or are you being impartial?
You told me I'm trying to be impartial. I guess.
Okay. Well, I'm back, and I hope it works out, and I hope people will graciously accept me back.
So there was another controversy.
Love the way he handled that, by the way.
I loved, I mean, he basically just took his balls out and put them on the table in front of that guy and said, "Look at them."
Yeah.
And he was so
he asked the guy,
uncomfortable.
can you clarify what you mean? And the guy was like, It's like, well, what remarks are you talking about? Like, be specific. There's no specificity. Was he talking about the one from 2006? Was he talking about?
So I think what he was referring to so Winona Ryder had come forward and done an interview with Vanity Fair or something like that. And she said that back in the 90s, she was at a Hollywood party and she came upon Mel Gibson and she was with her friend. And Winona Ryder's Jewish, the friend was gay. And Mel Gibson allegedly made this drunken joke about gay people. I think that he realized the guy was gay and he was like, "I'm not going to get AIDS, am I?" That's what she said. He said. Mel Gibson denies it. And then she said that Mel Gibson, when she found out that she was Jewish, he allegedly called her an oven dodger. And so Mel Gibson, she did this interview. Mel Gibson immediately came out and was like, "That never happened. I have done and said things that I regret, but I deny having said those things." And then, and I guess that his people tried to reach out to her people, and she came out and said, "Oh, Mel tried to reach out to apologize to me." And he was like, "I didn't try to apologize to her because I didn't say those things." But I think that, that was the Hollywood mafia trying to make sure that Mel Gibson couldn't come back and would be unable to continue making films in any respect. Certainly, there was Apocalypto as well that he had made, and that was controversial.
Great movie. Great movie.
Excellent movie, and similar to The Passion of the Christ because they used another dead language to make it. It's a great film, brutal, and definitely something I recommend everybody see. But it also received awards and accolades, but similarly controversial because it was Mel Gibson who wrote and directed it, and people were like, Mel Gibson shouldn't be allowed to do this, but the man is talented. Right. And here's the truth. Everybody makes mistakes. Right. I don't know a single person who hasn't done or said something that they regret because they were drunk. If you drink, we live on a long enough timeline where you're probably going to do something stupid. And it's just so happens to be that Mel Gibson is the kind of person who's going to have people around who are going to be recording or going to be at least talking about those things afterwards. And the best thing you can do in a situation like that is just choose to not drink. Don't put yourself in that position. If I personally, as a recovering alcoholic, if I was to start drinking again, there's no way that I would be able to do what we're doing right now, because I know that I would undoubtedly do something that I regret. I would probably make a fool out of myself, and I would hate myself, and I would immediately go back into that spiral of abuse.
Yeah. And you know, of course, Jesus is the one who really promoted the idea of like grace and forgiveness and mercy. But those are not virtues that are widely accepted, I think, in modern society.
No.
And they're certainly don't seem to be a part of the foreign policy platform of governments like Israel. So I think that's certainly notable. The Desmond Doss, though, from that film Hacksaw Ridge, I just pulled it up, forgot that he was from Lynchburg, Virginia. So that's not too far from me. And I forgot how good the cast was. I was just looking at the cast of that Vince Vaughn was in that, who's allegedly, quote unquote right wing. Right. But what the interesting timing on this, because that film came out in 2016. And so you kind of got you mentioned, that was like the return of Mel Gibson to like the mainstream. And then resulted in him making like his own studio and making films after that, which resulted, of course, in The Sound of Freedom, along with other movies. So it's just interesting that he comes back right when Trump comes back, and I'm not suggesting that was planned. If anything, that's just the hand of God, providence. But then, of course, Hollywood is trying to destroy him right in 2020, and then he comes out in 2021, salutes Trump. Appears with him again or in Vegas in 2023, and then of course endorses him after Trump says something nice about him in 2024, and then gets appointed in 2025 to be Trump's liaison.
And Trump got him his gun rights back in 2025. There was a woman, I don't know if she worked at the Department of Justice or at the ATF. It must have been the Department of Justice, but President Trump essentially had directed that Mel Gibson's gun rights be given back. And hold on. Her name is Liz Oyer. She was the pardon attorney at the U.S. Department of Justice from April of 2022. So during Biden's administration until March of 2025. And she was fired by Todd Blanche because she refused to return Mel Gibson's gun rights. On March 7th, Blanche sent me a 3-sentence memo ending my tenure as the Justice Department's pardon attorney. And, at this point, why not allow Mel Gibson to have his gun rights back? He's been sober. He has, put his life back together. Really, it was because he had at that point associated himself with Trump. And he was a notable anti-Semite, and because of that argument with his wife, they probably accused him of being a woman hater and, just being the worst types of people that you could possibly be. So she didn't want to do what the president had asked her to do. And it was because she said he had a history of violence against women, that if he was to receive his gun rights back, then he would undoubtedly shoot a woman, which is just totally stupid.
Yeah, it's really stupid. And that's what the Hacksaw Ridge, like just looking at some of the commentary around it, was, I guess, perceived as like a big deal, because not only was it his first return to directing since directing, was it The Passion? It wasn't The Passion of the Christ. It was
I think
since Apocalypto, which was 2006. So Apocalypto comes out in 2006. So this was his first film that he directed 10 years later, Hacksaw Ridge. And it was a departure from all the other films he had done, like Braveheart and Apocalypto, because the protagonist was not like violent, like he was a pacifist. Now, obviously, The Passion of the Christ would also fall in that exception category, but it's just an interesting, like in the current context of like we're at war right now, at least narratively. And then you have this guy who wins the Congressional Medal of Honor, but he was a pacifist who refused to fight, but still went and signed up. Interesting story. Very, very interesting story, to say the least.
Yeah.
So all that I think is, and then of course with that backstory that you just gave, it just kind of makes it more dynamic. And so he's certainly a dynamic character in real life, Mel Gibson. And the fact that Trump has picked him to be his liaison to Hollywood, while I think ostensibly kind of tearing down Hollywood, because I think Hollywood has become largely irrelevant.
Certainly. I mean, the idea is very similar to what Trump is doing to, the United States government and to the global order, and this has always been the question that I've posed to the audience, how do you destroy the mechanism of your enslavement when that mechanism is the all-controlling hand of everything around you, right? I mean, it's like in order to uproot that evil, is it possible to do it without completely destroying everything that holds up society? I mean, a lot of people would say, tear it all down, sort it out in the end, but nobody among us has ever lived in absolute anarchy, right? I mean, people, if they want that, they don't know what they're really asking for. And what President Trump would like to see happen is to bring Hollywood back to a position of financial solvency. So how do you do that? Well, you recreate a system that tells good stories, provides entertainment, doesn't inject propaganda, doesn't try to indoctrinate you, but instead just entertains you. I mean, for years, that's what Hollywood was. I would suggest that the indoctrination and the propaganda was always there in a subtle way, but it wasn't so obviously in your face. It's like now there's something called the Bechdel test. How many gay, trans, lesbian activists are in the project. And if it doesn't have enough of them, if it's just, straight white men doing straight white men things, then the film isn't going to get made. I think that, Mel Gibson, Sylvester Stallone, Jon Voight as ambassadors to Hollywood, it's about bringing Hollywood back to a place where it can just be about the storytelling and not be about the indoctrination.
Yeah, exactly. And storytelling, of course, is a big theme here at Badlands. And certainly when you're talking to Burning Bright and how important it is. And of course, the choice I mentioned earlier, one of the greatest stories ever told, the New Testament, the story of Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And again, Zach, I don't know if you've seen the show, but not our show, but the show The Chosen, the parallels between what is presented in the show, because there's a little bit of embellishment with fiction, to fill in, give some of the apostles' backstory, which is not part of scripture, that sort of thing. But Ash and I agree that all of those decisions, they don't create new narratives. They basically are just enriching the material that's already there. I mean, we were just talking the other day on this most recent episode about Judas, when Judas is introduced, because all the other apostles who are given a backstory, not all of them are, they all go through ego death. And we spent the whole second season talking about ego death and how important that is for the humility to kind of be able to accept Christ and accept the teachings and understand them. And Judas doesn't have that in the context of the show, the telling of this fictionalized version of the gospel. And I thought that was interesting because the parallels that we were talking about between what's happening now with the movement of people crashing out because their expectations aren't meeting reality. And that maybe is kind of what happened with Judas, was because all of them were convinced that he was going to lead a violent revolution against Rome, and he was going to create the kingdom. That was what was written in the scriptures, and all of the Pharisees were saying that, right? They were all saying that that's the Messiah's role. Mm-hmm. And so that's just one example, but there's a lot of other examples that it's just such a great story, and there's so many parallels and analogies you can draw from it. So again, I just love that Mel Gibson is doing this. Really look forward to the resurrection of the Christ. Before we play the outro and get out of here, I just want to pull this up and remind everybody that we are doing GART 11 in Nashville now in a couple of weeks. We're not very far out. April 9th through 12th. Join us in Nashville, Tennessee for GART 11, the Great American Restoration Tour. Zach and myself and many others will be there. And you can go to badlandsmedia.tv/events to get your in-person ticket or your virtual ticket. And I would encourage you to get a virtual ticket if you can't join us there. We do a special exclusive live stream every Thursday at 2 leading up to the event for ticket holders. But you can also join the Telegram chat, which is always very lively. We already have, I think, like 400 people in there. It looks like 300, 400 people in there. Yeah, and so it's already popping. So again, join us in Nashville, April 9th through 12th. That is badlandsmedia.tv/events. Zach. So again, appreciate your brother for being here. As I mentioned before, I really would love to get you back here for some of these other great topics, because there are a few other of these characters who I think are tied to Trump and tied to the story and very relevant to the general story of like this 30-year history, 40-year history that we kind of examine here on the show, of like explaining what's happening or trying to understand it. So thank you again, man. You're such a deep well of knowledge.
Thank you for having me. You know, one thing that we didn't get a chance to talk about that I was hoping we could bring up, so I'll just do it as a non sequitur at the end.
Please do it.
In 2019, it was reported that Mel Gibson and Shia LaBeouf, two Orthodox Christians, Catholics rather, were set to make a film about the Rothschild family. And
Really?
yes, and that film never came to fruition. And I've never seen a script that leaked online, but Gibson was going to play like the patriarch of the Rothschild family, and then Shia LaBeouf was supposed to be, I guess, like, you know, the younger heir to the fortune. And I don't know what time frame it was going to happen in. Don't know much about it, only that it was just going to be this film. And I just couldn't think of nothing more interesting than to see a Rothschild movie made by Mel Gibson and starring Shia LaBeouf both. I'm sad that project never happened, and I would hope maybe at some point in the future it does.
Maybe it still will. That would be amazing. I would love to see that happen. So here's hoping. Here's hoping.
Absolutely.
So once again, we are going to wrap up with it's like a 7-minute clip of Mel talking about the resurrection of the Christ on Joe Rogan. Again, this is chapter 48 of the Book of Trump. Wrapping up. Please join us next week for another chapter of the show. And Zach, we will see you next time we get you on here, brother.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Making this resurrection movie now, you also have this obligation. There's this, you're doing a very similar thing that you were doing with the Passion of the Christ, where this is a profound story.
Yes.
When you put something like that together, how do you choose who's going to be the next Jesus?
You use him again.
Caviezel.
Yeah, I know it's 20 years later.
Too.
It's 20 years later, but it's,
but it's the right guy.
Yeah, but it's supposed to be 3 days later, but he got 20 years older. And I think I have to use a few techniques that they've started to get really good with
the CGI and they can do amazing things now.
You can actually get some of the same people.
And by the time you film it, it'll be even better.
Yeah.
When are you going to start filming?
I'm hoping next year sometime. There's a lot required because it is, I'll just tell you this, it's an acid trip when we wrote it. It is like, I've never read anything like it. And my brother and I and Randall all sort of congregated on this. So there's some good heads put together, but there's some crazy stuff. And I think in order to really tell the story properly, you have to start with the fall of the angels, right?
Yeah.
Which is, you're in another place. You're in another realm. You know, you need to go to hell. You need to go to Sheol.
So you're going to have hell? You're going to have Satan, all that?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Sure, you got to have,
Right.
You got to have his origin.
How do you depict that?
This is a good question. And I think I have ideas about how to do that, and ideas about how to evoke things and emotions in people from the way you depict it and the way you shoot it. So I've been thinking about it for a long time. So it's not going to be easy, and it's going to require a lot of planning. And I'm not wholly sure I can pull it off, to tell you the truth. It's really super ambitious, but I'll take a crack at it. because that's what you got to do, right? Walk up to the plate, right? So I think I can get it, but it's not about me, you know.
Right.
It's about something else.
Well, if anybody can do it, you can do it.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
It's trying to find the way in that's not like cheesy or obvious, but that actually it's almost like a magic trick in a sense. It's diversion. It's obfuscate this, show that. Look over here. You know, I don't.
Yeah.
It's.
Do you have a title?
Yeah, it's just like the resurrection of the Christ.
Yeah,
it's like so. That's a title, and yeah, it's very ambitious. That's all I'll say. It took a long time to write. It's really ambitious, and it goes from like the fall of the angels to the death of the last apostle.
Do you have a start date?
I don't have a start date. I just have to begin pre-production and see what happens. And it's just going to roll in its own time. It's taking its own time. I thought it was late. I thought, oh, it's taking too long. It's taking too long, but it's probably just right. Yeah, it's when it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Well, if you believe that, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hope you're right.
I think I'm right. My instincts are that I'm right.
Yeah.
And if I was going to trust anybody with that story, it would be you.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a massive thing. And theologically, it's something that you have to really look at and make correlations that ring true, because it's not all written.
Do you consult with someone like a biblical scholar?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. And of course, you know, there's your own a thing that comes into it from having read the book a few times. You read the book a few times, and it's amazing how your memory, how there's these recessive files somewhere in the background, how you can correlate this piece to that piece over there. And that's important because juxtaposition is everything with this story. And what it means in a bigger picture.
Yeah.
So it's hard to explain, but it's quite involved.
Yeah, well, I can only imagine.
Yeah. And I don't know that you can do it in a foreign language because the concepts are too difficult now. So that you may have to resort to the vernacular so that that at least is clear.
Is that up for debate right now with you?
Yeah, it is. I'm thinking like, but like, look, have you seen these apps now where they have this AI stuff where the guy's talking German and then he switches to French and then Spanish and then Chinese? And, have you seen that?
Yeah.
And his mouth moves and it's the same voice. I mean, it's crazy what they do. So,
so you're going to use that kind of a tool, do you think?
You could.
Will you begin it in Aramaic or in Hebrew?
Maybe. Yeah, Aramaic is really the kick, isn't it? But you know, I think I'll write. I've written it in English, but I wrote the last one in English too, and translated it. And then the people had to learn to speak it because I think there's only about 400 people that actually speak Aramaic still.
Wow.
And apparently they understood it, so I was happy about that.
Wow.
So that was good. Yeah, 400,000 people. Sorry.
Oh,
in the world.
That makes more sense.
Yeah. Sorry. 400 people. Yeah.
I'd like preserve those 400 people.
Yeah. Not many people speaking Latin still, but that's quite well known.
Well, I can't wait to see it, man.
Yeah.
And I just want to say I appreciate you very much. All the stuff that you've done. You've made some really awesome pieces in your life. You really have.
Thank you. Done
Thanks some great stuff.
Yeah. I'm blown away by where you got to with this, which is like, didn't you start off just smoking a spliff on a couch with a guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty bizarre.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure how it happened.
No, it's good.
I just kind of kept doing it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a fan.
Thank you.
I watch it all the time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.